You are watching and listening to the Electronic Intifada. I'm Jon Elmer. This is the Resistance Report for day 552. It's also 8 months, 18 months, a year and a half since the war began, and we are today on day 40 of a total siege of Gaza. No food, no medicine, no fuel, none of the agreed upon machinery or housing that was supposed to get in, not enough tents, violations of the ceasefire in every way by Israel, including the resumption of the war, the squeezing of the buffer zones. Let's take a look at the map here so people can get our footing. We have buffer zone pressed in the north, Beit Hanun, Beit Lahia, biting into Jabalia, which we'll show you coming up. The Netzarim corridor is 60% occupied up to the Salahadin road that you can see running through between the words Netzarim and corridor there. So corridor of that word is all cut off. There's no road traffic along the main north-south highway in Gaza. And of course, as Nora reported, complete destruction of Rafa. And as I reported last week on the show, cutting the corridor, the Morag corridor between Rafa and Khan Yunis. Israel has carried out more than 1,000 airstrikes. They've killed 500 kids, and they're still not fighting any battles on the ground, face to face with the resistance. They're still operating in the buffer zone, carrying out these massacres with shelling, with drone strikes, with airstrikes, consistently at a pace that we had not seen in many months towards the end of the war. In a lot of ways, what we're looking at seems to match the period of October 2023, when there was massive airstrikes, unprecedented airstrikes in Gaza. We have the same kind of operational tempo. This weekend, the Israeli military said they carried out 150 airstrikes just in the 2-day weekend. They're carrying 50 a day each day, and that's why you have the disgusting toll that Nora so well reports on at the beginning of the show. So if you're just watching this as a segment, you should go and check out Nora's news report for the human rights situation. If we look at the next map, I'm going to show you a couple of Israeli military maps here. These are the again, the appalling grid maps that they've been using all throughout this war. But you can see the grayed in area is the buffer zone now. This is a bite out of Jabalia, the Jabalia camp in the north, forcing people out of that area and making an increased buffer zone, now more than 2 kilometers in the north. If we look at the next if we look at the next slide, you can see here pressing in Shujaiya, east of Gaza City, pressing on the edges of Shujaiya, but it doesn't matter. These evacuation notices, they're still bombing on the other side of that evacuation notice that you can see there. And they killed yesterday in a strike 38 people. They're still digging with hand trowels and bare hands because Israel won't allow fuel or machinery into Gaza. 8 people are still missing in that massacre, despite the fact that Israel it claims that these maps are warning people about where the strikes are. Abu Ubaidah said a message this week. He said half of the enemy's living captives, so there's 59 captives left in Gaza that are believed to be 22 alive. That's me saying that. Back to Abu Ubaidah, half of the enemy's living captives are located in the areas the occupation army demanded to be evacuated in recent days. We have decided not to transfer these captives from these areas, keeping them under strict security measures, knowing that these measures place their lives at extreme risk. And if the enemy is concerned about the lives of these captives, it must negotiate immediately for their evacuation or their release. Had the Israeli government been concerned about them, the captives, it would have adhered to the agreement signed in January, and most of these people would have been home if that was the case. So you can see again just the tightening of the siege, the increasing of the buffer zones in Gaza. If we look at the next map, this is 3. Yeah, this is 3. So this is an operation in Shujaiya. This is a previously dug IED here. This is Soraya Al-Quds Islamic Jihad. This was buried before, and now you're watching on a closed circuit television camera as a Merkava tank enters the eastern edge, and you can see in that CCTV footage that they are right on the edge of 𝐄𝐥𝐿. So they're just pushing the buffer zones, expanding them. They're not moving into built up areas and fighting the resistance. And it's very difficult for the resistance to access the buffer zones in many ways, other than the breach of the wall on October 7th, which was a technical feat. To attack the Israeli military in the buffer zone is the equivalent to raiding their territory the way they're set up. So you can't, there's a lot of people asking where the resistance is right now. The resistance is asking probably where the Israelis are right now, because they're not in these areas. There's been operations throughout the week that demonstrate where the fighters are, that the fighters are on the battlefield. The PFLP Abu Ali Mustafa brigades, the DFLP National Resistance Brigades, 𝐓𝐴 𝐄𝐿 all been capturing drones, Israeli drones, which suggests that those drones are exiting the buffer zone and are into the battlefield areas where the fighters are. So those are getting captured, which gives you an indication. But the Israeli military, speaking to Haaretz yesterday, said that they've been told to move very, very slowly. Army radio reported that as well, that their commanders are telling them to not, to be safe, to not, they're not interested in taking casualties right now. The war is not popular with the soldiers, and they're playing it safe. But in playing it safe, they're pushing the buffer zones and squeezing the population of Gaza. So that 𝐓𝐴 𝐄𝐿 operation was on Sunday, but it was a previously buried IED. And that's the second operation like that, where the Israelis have hit a previously set IED. The previous one was 2 weeks ago in east of Khan Yunis. So you can see that we know from previous battles that once the Israelis move into what is the battlefield, that there will be IEDs, there will be booby-trapped houses, and we haven't seen any of those face-to-face operations. There was 2 reports this week of clashes between the resistance and the Israelis. But nothing that would be like a ground war. And there's many reasons for that, the ones that I just gave you, but also I think that Qassam is adhering to the ceasefire. They're not carrying out a low probability operation that will set the ceasefire negotiations back, and Israel just wants to show their population that they're squeezing Gaza without actually fighting. Excuse me. If we look at number 5, you can see the map in Rafa. Again, they're cutting all of Rafa off. The Morag corridor is along that line. You can see they haven't completed the full corridor. But Army radio reported just this morning that the IDF a few weeks ago submitted a document to the Knesset Security Cabinet that says that only 25% of Qassam's tunnels have been destroyed. So 75% of Qassam's tunnels remain intact in the Gaza Strip, and Qassam has more than 20,000 fighters, which is very close to the number that they had when the war began. Israel's number was 26,000 fighters before the war began. And the Israeli military chief of staff, Eyal Zamir, visited Rafah this week, and he said to the Israeli soldiers, "I expect you to defeat the Rafah Brigade." The Rafah Brigade, as longtime listeners of this show will know, was said to be defeated in June, in the summer. Then later in the summer, they said they really defeated them. Halevi, the chief of staff, said that the 162nd Division had totally defeated the Rafah Brigade. Of course, we know that's not true. That was in September, and then in October, we saw the death of Yahya Sinwar in Tel Sultan, and then after that, we saw a number of operations that we broke down on this show that were Operation Avenging Sinwar. So the resistance was still functioning fully in Rafah, and now we have today from Army Radio, according to the IDF, this is a quote, according to the IDF, there are 2 functioning battalions left in Rafah and 3 left in Khan Yunis. There's only 4 battalions, according to the Israelis, in both of those places. So you're saying half of the battalions in Rafah and 3 out of 4 in Khan Yunis. They fought in Khan Yunis for 8 months. They fought in Rafah for 10 months. And now they're saying that they said, the quote from Halevi on September 12th was, we have completely disbanded the Rafah Brigade. So this just lies. The lies. This whole show has been covering Israeli lies. But as Nora pointed out, as these lies are being told, what's happening on the ground in that shaded area that you see on the left of the screen there, that's Rafa. And as the government media office said, more than 90% of homes have been destroyed in the Rafa government, which is 20,000 buildings with 50,000 housing units, to repeat what Nora said. So let's take a look at the next one, because Qassam this week also launched a barrage of rockets. You can see S-55s here. These are heavy warhead, medium range rockets. You can see the rocket launcher system there. Presumably, this is a buried system. You can see the dirt there that implies that it's a buried launcher. S-55s have a 55-kilometer range. That's the way the rocket naming goes. And a 50 kilogram warhead. So it's a significant rocket. On that sign, you can see the date that this was from Sunday. You see them launching their Iron Peace Enforcer rocket launcher, and on the rocket launcher pad. Now we're going to hear them from the other side. So those are the S-55s. There was a barrage of at least 10 rockets fired. It was one of the larger barrages in the last many months, and the Israelis pointed that out. The Israeli military pointed that out, although they always say they knocked them down. 𝐓𝐴 also carried out rocket operations hitting the Nahal Oz military base. So the rocket attacks are the response to the positioning of the Israeli forces. They're not in a position that the resistance can reach them in the buffer zone. That may change, and I've been saying that every week, that may change any moment. As soon as the Israelis push into the built-up areas, the territorial brigades will be there to defend the territory, as they have all throughout this battle. So that's Gaza. Let's turn now to Yemen. On the Yemen front, with the Yemeni forces are battling the U.S. In order to that the U.S. is fighting in order to protect Israel's genocide. The Yemenis have been clear that the blockade of the Red Sea and shipping to Israel and by Israel is a response to Israel's ceasefire violations that were negotiated and guaranteed by the United States. So the United States is fighting against its own agreement here. If we look at number 8, we can just take a look at the map to get a sense of where this battle is. The battle's in the Red Sea. In the upper portion, you see Israel there. To the left, you see Egypt. And in Saudi Arabia, in Saudi waters there, that's where the USS Truman carrier strike group is. And then down at the bottom of your screen, you can see Yemen and that tight squeeze. The choke point there is the Bab el-Mandab, and that is the entrance into the Red Sea, which has been all but shut down to civilian shipping by the Ansar Allah Yemeni armed forces blockade. Although it's been reported this week that there are still 0 attacks on commercial vessels, but transits are down 70% through the Bab el-Mandab into the Red Sea, which goes up into the Suez Canal and into the Mediterranean. So ships are taking the long route all the way around Africa. And U.S. Central Command, who's overseeing this battle, has described it as a 24/7 battle. And the U.S. Navy attacks have been attacked by the Yemeni forces on some days 2 and 3 times in a 24-hour period. Abdel Malik al-Houthi, the leader of Ansar Allah, said this week that America does not intimidate us, nor do we consider it dominant. The U.S. has moved towards aggression against our country as part of its participation with the Israeli enemy and its aggression against the Palestinian people. Their aggression is escalating. They're using B-2 stealth bombers, and some days there's more than 90 air raids. The American aggression is not able to stop the military operations supporting the Palestinian people, nor was it able to provide protection for Israeli navigation in the Red Sea, the Gulf of Aden, or the Arabian Sea. So total failures. And Abdel Malik al-Houthi also warned this week, he warned all Arab regimes and countries neighboring Yemen not to get involved with the Americans in supporting the Israelis, not to cooperate, not to allow their countries to be used as bases for attacks. So that seemed like a threat to them. It's not clear if he's talking about hosting missile defense systems, because I reported last week that multiple Patriot batteries and a THAAD battery were being moved into the area, which suggests more into Saudi Arabia. The THAAD arrived in Israel at Nevatim Air Base in the south from the Americans, and Nevatim Air Base is one of the air bases that the Yemeni ballistic missiles target regularly. And Abdel Malik al-Houthi said, "We are in advanced position at the naval level, and the aircraft carrier Truman is constantly on the run, and its pursuit of it, and our pursuit of it, is continuing. The aircraft carrier Truman is constantly under attack as it flees further north in the Red Sea." If we look at the next map, you can get a sense of where their buildup is here. This is a map by Ian Ellis, who's an open source tracker tracking naval data, satellite imagery, U.S. Navy fleet tracking, and AIS data. A lot of this is all open source data that is different than the Israeli battle space, where the Israeli military can censor all of this material. The Americans can't censor this open source material, so we're able to track the ships where they are exactly. And you can see Diego Garcia down there. That's in the Indian Ocean. That's what's hosting the B-2 bombers, and the B-2 bombers are the stealth bombers, heavy bombers that carry 10 times the ordnance that the F-18s that are taking off from the aircraft carriers can carry. They can also carry the heavy bunker busters, which are being used on the Yemeni's underground missile facilities that are built into the mountains, although they have very little impact bombing into the mountains. But you can see there the Truman Carrier Group is up in the Red Sea, and you can see the Carl Vinson carrier strike group is coming over from the Indo-Pacific, and it should be in the Indian Ocean in the next 2 or 3 days. You're listening to this report on April 10th, so they should be coming any day now. They'll arrive, and there'll be 2 carrier strike groups fighting the Yemenis so that Israel can carry out a genocide. 2 aircraft carriers carry about 180 fighter jets. So significant escalation when that second carrier gets there. And it was a significant escalation to have 6 B-2 bombers move to Diego Garcia. It's roughly 50% of the active B-2 fleet for the U.S. And so they're obviously committed to this battle for Israel. And that map just shows it. If we look at the next map, we can see this is the kind of tracking that we can get. This is the Copernicus satellite, and the imagery is captured by Tom Bike, who does great open source work tracking these vessels around the world. You can see that the map on the bottom left, the inset map, shows that it's about 500 miles away from Yemen. So they're trying to keep their distance from Yemen because the closer they are, the more arsenal that the Yemenis can hit them with. We'll show that some of that arsenal here. Number 11 is the primary one that they're using. This is an anti-ship ballistic missile. This is the ASIF. And these attacks are generally in waves. They fire these anti-ship ballistic missiles, then they fire cruise missiles. Anti-ship ballistic missiles go fast, cruise missiles go medium speed, and then they fire drones, and the drones go slow speed, and they're in staggered, which provides a bit of a challenge to the air defense systems for the carriers and for the guided missile destroyers that are escorting the carriers. We saw that also with the Iranian attack, where they came in different waves. Um, so these are the principal anti-ship ballistic missiles. That this is the longer range one that they have. This next one is the 𝐄𝐥𝐿. It's slightly shorter range. We last saw this in a parade in 2023, so they've surely increased the range of these weapons in the 2 years since then. But we haven't got a chance to see those weapons in the air yet. So we haven't seen the changes. We have to go on these parade images. So this is one of half a dozen. The Ansar Allah, the Yemeni armed forces, have half a dozen anti-ship ballistic missiles, half a dozen anti-ship cruise missiles, and those are constantly being fired on a daily basis. Like I said, sometimes more than one a day, one barrage a day at the U.S. And we can see in this next one, we can hear the story from the American side. This is the top naval, the Navy's top surface warfare officer, so the top naval chief, describing the attack. And he said, in a recent attack, this is from January, so this is from the previous engagements that ended with the ceasefire, because Ansar Allah and the Yemeni armed forces adhered to the ceasefire. And would, the minute the ceasefire goes back in effect, they will adhere to that if the United States also adheres to the ceasefire that they are the guarantors of. But here you can hear Navy top surface office warfare officer, Vice Admiral Brendan McLean. He says, in a recent attack, the destroyer USS Spruance was in a fight where they shot down 3 anti-ship ballistic missiles, 3 anti-ship cruise missiles, and 7 one-way aerial attack drones coming towards them. And in this article, they talk about, so that's from the Navy side, which roughly matches exactly what the Yemeni armed forces say in their field reports every day. And here in this article, he underlines the costs, the missile expenditures of the cost for the Navy. The SM-2 missiles that they're firing are $2.5 million apiece. The SM-6 missiles are about $4 million. The SM-3 Sea Sparrows can range from 10 to 30 million. And so you're talking about spending hundreds of millions of, if not billions of dollars in this battle in the Red Sea. Also of note, Navy manufacturing, they only manufactured last year 17 SM-2 missiles, 12 SM-3s, and 125 SM-6s. So they're firing more than a year's worth of munitions construction. If we look at the next one, you can see the New York Times talked about this earlier this week. They talked about, they got a leak from the Pentagon about the amount of money that has spent. It says U.S. strikes in Yemen, burning through munitions with limited success. In just 3 weeks, the Pentagon has used $200 million worth of munitions in Operation Rough Rider against the Houthi militia, officials said, and that was leaked from a Pentagon official who spoke in a closed session with Congress. So they're spending $200 million plus in this period of time. CNN wrote a report based on some other Pentagon officials that said the number was over $1 billion already. So, and as that's happening, if we look at the next one, the Yemeni armed forces are downing Reapers. They got another 2 this week since you last saw me. This is now 4 that they've gotten since March 2nd, when Israel violated the ceasefire by blockading Gaza. And the third one since March 15th, when the U.S. Moved into this battle. These MQ-9 Reaper drones, they don't have any countermeasures. They're big and silver and shiny metal. They have weapons hanging off the wings. They create a massive radar signature. And the Ansar Allah and the Yemeni armed forces have an indigenously made surface-to-air missile that's destroying them. And honestly, the number of surface-to-air missiles that they have, the 358, can take down these Reapers every time they're in the airspace. So the U.S. doesn't want to get close enough. They need these Reapers to find intelligence to what they can strike with their multi-million dollar munitions. They need the Reapers to get those locations because they don't have troops on the ground, and the air defenses of the Yemenis are able to to burn them and leave them in a field like we see here in the desert. This was over Jaf province. And so that's the 18th since the battle in the Red Sea started, and the 22nd Reaper downed since 2017 when the 358 surface to air missile came into use. And one more here too to look at. The Yemenis are also attacking Israel. They've launched multiple Yafa drone. This is the Yafa drone that we saw released. This is the promo from July 2024 when we first saw it. And this was the drone that penetrated Israel's air defenses and hit right near the U.S. embassy in Tel Aviv, almost a dead hit. Flew out over the sea and came in across the beach from the west. The Israelis weren't expecting that. This week, they've launched multiple drones, presumably this Yafa drone, and the Israelis said it came from the east. So they're not flying it straight up. They're flying them on routes that are attacking from places that they think the Israelis aren't expecting. And that's one of the benefits of this Samad class drone, is that it has 2,500 kilometers range. So you can send it out a few hundred kilometers in either direction and still be able to reach Israel. It carries a 50-kilogram warhead, and there you see its rocket assisted launch there. So this is another development by the Yemeni armed forces. Components and some know-how from Iran, but as Donald Trump said in the White House with Netanyahu the other day, he exclaimed that they make them themselves. That was Trump's. He couldn't believe it. They make them themselves. They make the missiles themselves, and underground bases that cannot be bombed, and they make the drones in the same place. So the Yemeni Armed Forces said yesterday, the Yemeni Armed Forces Unmanned Air Force carried out a military operation targeting an Israeli military target in the occupied Tel Aviv region with a Yafa drone. The armed forces, as they fight this battle with all bravery, defiance, and faith, confirm once again, as they have confirmed over the past years, that the great Yemen is unbreakable and will not retreat from supporting and backing the oppressed Palestinian people, and will not surrender to American aggression. It will remain as it was, and as it will always and forever remain, a graveyard for invaders. So that is the resistance report for this week. We have the Yemenis carrying out this battle in solidarity with Gaza, and the increasing push towards war in Gaza as well.